Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the bizarre, fragile, and honestly, utterly fascinating illusion that is modern money. Have you ever actually looked closely at a $20 bill? It's literally just a piece of high-fiber paper with no intrinsic value whatsoever. There's no gold or silver locked in a vault backing it up anymore. And yet, we all completely organize our lives, our labor, and our entire societies around acquiring it.
So let's dive into this profound paradox. How on earth can one country create $3 trillion from absolutely nothing to save its economy, while another destroys wealth with the literal stroke of a pen? Think back to the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. The U.S. Federal Reserve injected $3 trillion into the economy with just a few keystrokes on a computer. New money. Click, click. Just created out of thin air to buy financial assets and stabilize the whole system. Meanwhile, right around that very same time in 2009, the North Korean government engineered a currency reform. They just lopped 2 zeros off their currency, the won, but then strictly limited how much of the old currency's citizens could swap for the new one. With a single, abrupt decree, black market traders and ordinary citizens who were hiding cash to avoid starvation had their hard-earned wealth turned into worthless scrap paper.
Section 1. The illusion of value. You see, it all comes down to the crazy fact that modern fiat money has zero intrinsic value. It is a completely man-made construct entirely built on confidence and structure. It literally only works because we all collectively agree that it works.
But that begs a pretty massive question, right? If that paper in your wallet, or those random digits in your bank app, are technically worthless, what magically transforms them into something we all desperately want and need? How does a simple piece of paper become an absolute lifeline?
Well, any successful currency in human history really just has to fulfill 3 fundamental rules. First, it's got to be a unit of account. Think of it like a universal translator. You don't have to figure out how many carats a wool sweater costs, you just compare their dollar prices. Second, it has to be a store of value. If you take it as payment today, you absolutely need to know it'll hold its purchasing power next week or next month. And third, it needs to be a medium of exchange, meaning it's portable, divisible, and widely accepted by everyone so you can conduct transactions with ease.
And this brilliantly illustrates why U.S. inmates actually use pouches of mackerel as their currency. It's true. After a federal smoking ban back in 2004 wiped out cigarettes as the go-to prison money, inmates desperately needed a new monetary system. Enter the pouch of mackerel, affectionately known as the Mac. It hits all 3 rules. It's a unit of account. A fresh haircut might cost you 2 Macs. It's a store of value because it doesn't spoil inside the pouch. And it's a medium of exchange because it's super portable and everyone accepts it. Plus, it has one major thing fiat money doesn't: actual intrinsic value. I mean, if the prison economy completely collapses, you can still crack it open and eat it.
Moving on to Section 2, Too Hot, the Inflation Monster. So, when a government is fully in control of a fiat currency, the temptation to just print more can be totally overwhelming. And that causes the supply of money to get completely out of whack with the real economy.
Think of the whole economy like a giant poker game. The chips on the table represent fiat money, and the actual cash in the lockbox represents the real goods and services out there in the world. Now, if the host secretly sneaks more chips onto the table without putting any real wealth into the lockbox, they haven't made the players any richer. They've just guaranteed that when it's time to cash out, the value of every single chip drops. That is inflation in a nutshell. The purchasing power of the money goes down simply because there's way more of it chasing the exact same amount of real stuff.
Now, take this concept to the absolute extreme, and you get the sheer absurdity of hyperinflation. Just look at this number, $100 trillion. This was a real note issued in Zimbabwe back in 2008. The government printed money so recklessly that prices were literally doubling by the hour. A beer at a bar could cost you $100 billion, and then an hour later, $150 billion. The money completely lost its primary function as a store of value. It basically became better suited for starting campfires than for buying groceries.
Which brings us to Section 3, Too Cold, the deflation death spiral. Now, if inflation is printing way too much, deflation is when prices fall across the board. Sure, that sounds absolutely amazing if you're just trying to buy a beer, but I promise you it is an economic nightmare.
You see, when prices fall, wages generally fall right along with them. But here is the kicker: your debts do not. When your wages drop, your fixed monthly mortgage payment effectively gets way more expensive in real terms. The famous economist Irving Fisher observed this firsthand during the Great Depression. It kicks off this terrifying Stephen King-esque chain reaction. People can't pay their debts, they panic sell their assets, banks get into massive trouble, credit totally dries up, and prices just plummet even further.
And to make matters even worse, central banks really struggle to fix deflation because they get trapped by something called the zero bound. Normally, to jumpstart a sputtering economy, a central bank just lowers interest rates, right? But they can't logically force nominal interest rates below zero. I mean, you can't ask a bank to loan out $1 million and only ask for $960,000 back a year later. The bank would just hoard the cash in a giant vault. So deflation traps central banks, completely limiting their ability to step on the economic accelerator.
All right, Section 4, Real versus Nominal Wealth. This brings us to a massive collective blind spot we all share, constantly confusing the literal number on a bill with its actual purchasing power. This is the crucial difference between nominal wealth, the raw numbers, and real wealth, which is adjusted for inflation.
Let's dive into a quick thought experiment using Hollywood box office numbers to really hammer this home. Everyone loves debating blockbusters, right? So what do you think is actually the highest grossing movie of all time?
Well, if we just look at nominal wealth, meaning the unadjusted raw box office receipts, you get a list completely dominated by recent hits. Star Wars, The Force Awakens, Avatar, they sit right at the top. But is that because vastly more people actually bought tickets to see them? No way. It's simply because a movie ticket costs significantly more today than it did 30 or 40 years ago. Hollywood studios absolutely love touting nominal numbers because it magically makes every single new hit look like the biggest success in human history.
But watch this dramatic shift when we adjust for inflation. This reveals the true, real commercial champions of cinema. Suddenly, Gone with the Wind from way back in 1939 takes the crown, followed by the original 1977 Star Wars and The Sound of Music. Understanding this critical difference between nominal numbers and real purchasing power isn't just fun movie trivia, it's absolutely vital. It's how we ensure things like Social Security checks and tax brackets don't completely crush everyday people as prices change over time.
Next up, Section 5, Measuring the Madness. To make sure our salaries and taxes don't get eaten alive by this invisible force, somebody has to meticulously track all these changing prices.
Enter the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Get this, government agents literally go undercover into the retail world. We're talking about economic assistants turning clothing inside out to check fabric blends, sometimes awkwardly inspecting lingerie in department stores, or literally chasing down food trucks on the streets of DC just to see if a $6 sandwich still includes vegetables. They track exactly how the cost of daily life is changing across 80,000 carefully defined items every single month, all to build the Consumer Price Index.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the sheer art of statistics, because what happens if a price goes up, but the product also got drastically better? Think about a modern smartphone versus a clunky flip phone from 20 years ago. The BLS uses this really complex process called hedonics to figure out if a price spiked because of inflation or simply because the product got a major upgrade. In one fascinating case, they calculated a 2015 car model was exactly $45.78 better than the 2014 version, purely because of added features. So they subtract that highly specific quality value before calculating the inflation rate. It's incredibly precise, yet kind of entirely subjective at the exact same time.
Finally, Section 6, the psychology of money. Because all of this math builds up to one inescapable truth. Money is deeply, profoundly psychological. It's not just the math, it's how our messy human brains process that math.
Take a look at this scenario. Mathematically speaking, these two options are completely identical in terms of your real purchasing power. If your salary stays flat and prices stay flat, you can buy the exact same amount of stuff. If your salary goes up 5%, but prices also rise 5%, you still buy the exact same amount of stuff. Yet human beings vastly prefer option B. We just love seeing a bigger number printed on our paychecks. It's a massive psychological glitch that economists call the money illusion.
Ultimately, fiat currency is just a bizarre, incredibly delicate balancing act. It requires advanced mathematics to measure, immense public trust to actually function, and it plays directly into our psychological vulnerabilities. As Yogi Berra so perfectly put it, a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. That quote perfectly captures the beautiful absurdity of trying to anchor real value to something that is constantly shifting beneath our feet.
So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. The next time you get a raise at work or wince at a rising price tag at the grocery store, stop and ask yourself, are you seeing the real value of that money, or are you just falling for the illusion? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the numbers right in front of you.